All right. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties on the other platform, but back here with Barry Beck. Thanks for helping me get through that. But we'll keep rolling here, Barry. Well, so we're talking about the New York Rangers, and we're talking about going from Denver. You end up in New York, and you go from a team that's about to be run out of town. Midnight move to New Jersey to playing in the best, the most famous rink in the world, Madison Square Garden. How was that for a young guy going in, a young Canadian kid going in and being on Broadway? That just must have been something else.
Yeah, if I can, I just want to just briefly go back to, when the trade happened from Colorado to the Rangers. I know that Don Cherry was trying to help me, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Don over the years. And maybe somebody can give him this message, but I mean, he really tried to help me stay with Colorado. He wanted to stay there, and he wanted to try and build that franchise. That is a big challenge for not only players but coaches. So he was trying to help me. He was trying to help me get paid also, but that wasn't to be. And of course, I never really liked going into New York because I was playing in Colorado. There was the mountains. It reminded me a lot of Vancouver. There was a lot of nature, and of course there wasn't any of that in New Jersey and New York City from when I used to go on our road trips. But it didn't take me long to get acquainted with New York City. And I've talked about Sonny Werblin before, and I mean, I love New York City, and there's some beautiful parts of New Jersey also. Once you get to know the state, it just wasn't beautiful right at the Meadowlands, although I did like the Brendan Byrne Arena. Every arena is different. You have different sight lines when you're a player. Some arenas you can play great in. Other ones, you just don't see things the same way. So there was always a couple of rinks that I liked. Madison Square Garden was one of them. A lot of players didn't like the ice. They said it was too soft because it was constantly being covered because you have so many events there all year long in Madison Square Garden with the Knicks, with the circus and concerts and everything else. But I loved it. But yeah, it was a rude awakening coming from Denver and then being sort of thrust into New York City. And New York is crazy about their sports teams. It's really old school because it's like Boston, it's like Philadelphia. Those are cities that have been well established for years, and were tough cities to grow up in for fans. And so they have that mentality with their sport teams. That's the way they live through their sports teams. They want their sport teams to be hardworking, to be blue collar, hard hat type of teams, and represent the people of the city. So that took me a little bit of time to get used to. And it's, you have to perform there every night. When you go to a Broadway show, you cannot not perform.
Right.
You have to be ready every night. Sonny Werblin was the man behind the Rangers when I first went to the Rangers, and he was Joe Namath's agent when Joe was playing for the New York Jets. Wow. And of course, everybody knows about Joe Namath and his off ice activities. He was into acting and of course dating beautiful women, sort of like Ron Duguay was.
Yeah.
When I played for the Rangers. But Sonny Werblin loved that. He loved the players to be in different events and get different exposure and get press. So there is a story that John Halligan was the PR guy for the Rangers. And he came to me one time and he said, listen, there's a director, he's shooting a movie and he would like you to be the lead in the movie. And I said, oh yeah. I said, oh, okay. And he said, the movie is called Hoof and Horns, and it's a Western. And he comes to all the Ranger games. This is the director John is talking about.
Yeah.
And he would like to meet you. So I said, great. So this was about the time Urban Cowboy was coming out with John Travolta. Yeah. So I was in New York City. I bought myself a cowboy hat. I had a frilled jacket. Suede jacket, sort of Western style, cowboy boots. And so I think it was the Russian Tea Room, which is a very famous restaurant in New York City, that John and I waited for the director to come in. And when he finally came, this is the time when there was no cell phones at all. When he finally came in the door, we saw this guy come in and he had a white cane. And he was trying to find his way to the table. And one of the waiters put his hand in his arm and led him to the table. And he introduced himself, and the director was blind. I didn't know that the director was blind. When he went to the bathroom, I said, well, how does John know, or how does the director know what he even looked like? Yeah. He says, well, he gets a good feel for the games when he's at the games. He hears the people, and he just thought you would be right for the role. Now, nothing ever came of it.
Yeah,
I was sent a big script, and I read the script, and the name of the lead character was Blue Gentry.
Oh wow!
So my mother was calling me Blue for like 6 months.
That's great. Oh, that's great. I can just imagine.
That was my acting career, was down the tubes before it even started.
Yeah. So I remember as a kid, the Rangers Montreal final, was that 79?
That was 79. Yeah.
Yeah. 79. And how many, I forget the series. I just remember, the Rangers was it, and then that, I mean, obviously that was the end of Montreal's kind of run there that year. They win five in a row at that point.
Yeah. They won that series in 5 games. The Rangers won the first game. I think it was 6-2.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember everybody shocked. Oh my goodness. Yeah. What's going to happen here? And then, then Guy and Steve Shutt and guys like that took over, and, just crazy. So that's the closest you ever got there, the final in 79.
Well, I wasn't on that team. I mean, that's the 79 finals. I got traded in. So that would have been in May of.
So it was, okay. So you weren't in the, yeah, I see. Okay.
I was traded in November of 79.
Yeah.
I think it was November 4th. I think it was.
How deep did you get in your Ranger career?
Well, it's really, of course, the Islanders were so strong in the early 80s, and we had some great games with them. And we were, we got to the semifinals a few different times, but our road always went through the Islanders.
Yeah, that's tough.
So that was pretty tough. If you weren't playing for the Islanders or the Oilers in the 80s,
you didn't get anything.
Calgary there, and I think in 88, you didn't win a Stanley Cup.
That's right. Yeah. Well, look at those Winnipeg teams. There was Winnipeg teams that had to play Edmonton in the first round. I had Ian Duncan on my show, and Ian was just like we were a Stanley Cup team, but we'd have to play Edmonton in the first round every year. Right?
Yeah.
What do you do?
It was the same with us, when Herb Brooks came, and Herb Brooks was a great coach. I mean, he really made it fun for a player to play. I know he was a tough coach, and he was just consumed by hockey 24 hours a day. And yeah, he made it fun for me as a defenseman. I got to rush the puck. 5 players were always looking after, they call it transition of from defense to offense, how quickly you change when you get the puck. Everybody is on offense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that really, and it was all about puck possession. We didn't dump the puck in anymore. If there wasn't a play, we threw the puck. Forwards would throw the puck back to the defenseman. We'd regroup. And so, when I first went to the Rangers, Fred Shero's practices were 45 minutes long. And some of the players were complaining, saying the practices were too long. And then when Herb came, Herb would he'd have 3-hour practices.
Right.
So I thought he really revolutionized the game in the early 80s, because then that more of a European style came in, puck possession, offense, and really made it fun for players to play.
Yeah, they started to bring almost like that 5-man unit, right? So the defensemen weren't just told to stay where you are. there were certain schemes and neutral zone turnovers that the defenseman would actually engage and for sure. And then if you look through the history of the game, there's 4 or 5 coaches that stand out, and certainly Brooks was one of them. Roger Nielsen was another one, and he would kind of do wacky things and do things, be the first guy to do it. And obviously Scott Bowman, he was he figured stuff out as well. But that's quite interesting. That at that time, guys were complaining about a 45-minute practice. I think they would now. I've heard of, sometimes it's 15, 18 minutes that, is the practice. And then the guys will go on a little bit ahead and a little bit behind. But can you imagine that if you go into a NHL room right now and say, hey boys, we're having a 3-hour practice after you played last night? There'd be a mutiny. That'd be it. Right.
One thing with Herb that you had to understand as a player was that all the parts were interchangeable.
Yeah.
So I could be playing defense, but I could be playing forward on the same shift.
Mm-hmm.
And the forward could be playing defense. So when you're in attack mode, that's what happens. And when you see defensemen that are rushing the puck in today's game, when you go to a practice, it used to be that you could tell who the defensemen were.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't handle the puck as well. Maybe they didn't skate as well, but you can't tell anymore.
No.
I mean, they are, you go to an NHL practice, you don't know, maybe they have different colors or one color for the defenseman, but you wouldn't know because the skills are the same.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they, it's, and the size isn't, you used to be able to tell by size too. You could go to a game and say, okay, those, the D are probably those 6 right there, 4 of them anyway. But it was obviously you were known as a guy that looked after your teammates, and obviously captain of the New York Rangers. You had to play the game the right way. You had to do the right things, I guess. If you were going to be in that big of a market and you're going to be the face of the franchise, that's something that nobody will ever take away from you, man. When you're an NHL captain, is one thing, but the New York Rangers or an original 6 team, that's special. So tell me about the toughest guy that you kind of encountered over your career. That could have been anywhere. Who did you end up with, that you regret?
Well, there's different toughness, as you pointed out earlier. Guys that keep coming back for more, like some guys you can maybe try to intimidate a little bit at that point. When I was playing in the 80s, one guy you could never intimidate was Dino Ciccarelli.
Yeah.
I mean, he was always in front of the net, always causing a problem. Doug Gilmour was a similar player. With the Islanders, of course, it was Clark Gillies and Bob Nystrom. I mean, those guys were tough, honest players, and I loved playing against those type of players. I like playing against guys that were physical, because that's the way that I tried to play the game, and that were honest. I mean, when you play that style of game, of course, there is that fine line that you're going to cross over once in a while. You don't want to, because there's a lot of honor in the game at that point, and playing it that way. And I always saw it that way. And I really appreciated playing against those type of players that were hard-nosed, that came to play every night. Being a left defenseman, I got a chance to play against most of the best right wingers in the game at that time. One that I always put in that group is Rick Middleton. And I know that it's always been talked about him and with the Hall of Fame, and that he hasn't entered the Hall of Fame yet, but I think that he should. He was a great player. I played with him in the 81 Canada Cup. And Yari Corey, Mike Bossy, I played against on a consistent.
Yeah.
And when you look at the success of those dynasty teams in the 80s, all you got to do is look on their team and see how many Hall of Fame players that they have on their team. And then it's not hard to see why they were so successful.
Wow, exactly. I mean, you just mentioned the 81 Canada Cup. So that's my wheelhouse, right? So that's, I looked at the roster this afternoon, and that was my childhood, right? That was just to mention, and our viewers and listeners, look this team up. I made a few notes here. So you got Barry, of course, on the back end. You've got Ray Bork on the back end. And then you got a defensive forward by the name of Bob Gainey, probably best ever at that position. Marcel Dion, Guy Lafleur, Mike Bossy, and Wayne Gretzky. I mean, you're talking about the best of the best, right? And that's not just at that time. I'm talking all time. We're talking top 10 players in the NHL history are on that team. There are some guys that were cut from that hockey club, and this is to put it into perspective how special that group of guys were. Paul Coffey, cut. He was a kid though, right?
Yeah.
He was probably 19, 20 years old, just into the league, right? He went to camp, I know. Mike Gartner didn't make that club. He was young player as well. But then a couple older guys that, I know Sittler was kind of in the twilight of his career at that point. But I was a little shocked. Did any of these guys get hurt, Sittler or Steve Shutt? Were they dealing with injuries?
No, I just think that they were probably more so the tail end of their career.
Yeah.
And, I think they had Gretzky, Lafleur, and Bossy on one line.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it was crazy in practice. As a defenseman, you sort of got to laugh when you're doing line runs. You see Gretzky and Bossy and Lafleur coming down on you on a 3-on-2 rush. You would laugh with your defense partner, and it's like, hey, what are we going to do here?
Yeah, crazy.
So, not only that 81 team, but I played in 1971 or 79, excuse me, with the Challenge Cup that was played at Madison Square Garden. And I have some photos of both that 81 Canada Cup team and the 79 Challenge Cup team. I think I'm the only player on there that isn't in the Hall of Fame. So,
yeah. Wow.
But they were. I mean, my defense partner in the 79 Challenge Cup was Serge Savard.
Wow. Legend.
So when I first came into the league, my rookie year, all of those big players, Larry Robinson, Guy Lapointe, they were still playing for the Canadians. Now, I know the Canadians were sort of starting to slide downhill a little bit at that point because all those great players were getting a little bit older. And when you mentioned also Steve Shutt, I think it was 79 also that my rookie year that I went in and I played in Team Showdown, which was shot just outside of, I think it was shot in Markham, I think, outside of Toronto.
Yep.
And so Steve Shutt, we were on the same team. There was Steve Shutt, Rogie Vachon, Peter Mahovlich, and myself. And we won the Team Showdown.
Wow.
And Peter Mahovlich used to drive us to the rink, and he had a white Bentley. So we had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun shooting that Team Showdown, got a big trophy from it. And I think we made, I don't know, it was about maybe $9,000-$10,000 a player, which was a lot of money back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I remember that. They you know what, the intermissions back then, in my childhood, if I remember, you had Peter Puck, right? You had as a little kid watching the cartoon Puck, and he'd say, "Oh, this is icing when I go down all the way down the ice," and then they did the showdown, and they did the showdown 79, showdown 78, and they had these. It was simpler then, it wasn't. I think they analyze it a little bit too much now. I think it's to the point where it's like, hey, you know what? Let's enjoy the game and then have a little bit of entertainment in between periods. I don't want to see. I just watch the period. I don't need to see it broke down. I know what happened, right? A hockey guy knows what happened. I want to see a little entertainment. I like when I like what they're doing in the States, and they got Bissonnette and Gretzky, and they're a little bit less serious and stuffy, right? They're talking and they're kind of carrying on a little bit on the set. I wish it would go a little bit that way. I think you might attract some new viewers. It's just kind of stale, but I'm hearing that Ron McLean's on his way out, and they're going to clean house at Hockey Night in Canada. Going into next season. So
yeah, I haven't seen Hockey Night in Canada in quite a long time, being of course over in Hong Kong for the past 16 years.
yeah,
I mean, we do have the NHL Network. It's tough to watch games at 7:30 in the morning.
yeah,
Try to get jacked up for a game at 7:30. It's a little bit different at night when you have all day to prepare and you're watching the news and the 24 whatever it is, the sports channel, and
yeah,
they're hyping the game the whole time. But when you first wake up and you put on a playoff game, you're jumping right into it.
yeah.
Over here in Asia. So, but yeah, mentioning those teams and those players that I had a chance to play with. Yeah, there was a lot of great players and memories from of course 79 and 81 for those teams that I played on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could just imagine, when you can look back on it now and think, wow, like look at the team I was part of, right? Look at the guys that I played with. That's just outstanding. And getting back to the kids, so I have a 9-year-old, as you know, Jack, and he plays pretty good little player, and he's playing defense. He sees the game real well. But what I'm finding with the kids in general now is they don't watch the games anymore, Barry, because they can pick up their tablet in the morning, like you said. There's a playoff game the night before, and Jack can pick up his tablet and go to TSN or Sportsnet and literally watch everything that happened. If there was a fight, they'll show it. If the coach was yelling at the ref, they'll show it. They'll show every goal, any penalties that might have crossed the line or a scrum or something like that. So they watch that, and then they'll, if they like a goal, they'll watch it 8 times. If the guy does a good, cool toe drag or makes a move on the goalie that they like, they'll just rewind it and watch it. But what I'm trying to get Jack to do, and talking to other hockey dads around and people that I teach their kids, it's this is what happens. They kids don't have 3 hours to sit back and watch a game. They'll sit there while the game's on, but they're playing their video game or they're doing something else. So and that's what I'm finding as a skills guy, and I'm sure you run into it too, probably different being over there, but it's teaching the game, teaching like the stuff that we learned when we were kids from watching Hockey Night in Canada and watching how how to stick up for your teammate, how if somebody comes in after a whistle and 3 seconds later drills a head high shot at your goalie, that needs to be addressed right now. That stuff isn't being noticed anymore because the kids aren't watching the games, right? We have to teach them that now, which we never had to be taught that. We knew. That's how it was.
Yeah, that was sort of the rule on the playground.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're at school. So I think for a coach now, I mean, when you're coaching kids, you have to look at the game through their eyes. And to be a good teacher, I think, how do they see things?
Yeah.
And what is the best way for them to learn? In Hong Kong, there's only a certain amount of time that kids have. Parents don't see their kids becoming professional hockey players. There's never been a player from Hong Kong that has played in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about academics here.
Yeah.
And I know academics are very important. I know parents understand that in Western culture also. But a lot of parents can get fixated, especially when your child is a good player, be it a boy or a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I was never. I know you showed a photo of me on my Pee Wee team, and I just happened to be captain of that team also. So, but there was never any parents following me around or talk about me playing in the NHL at that particular time. There wasn't a lot of players from Vancouver playing in the NHL. I think John Ferguson was the only one.
Oh, wow. There's another tough guy.
John Ferguson grew up in the same area, east end of Vancouver, as myself. We went to the same high school. So, he was another one who was one of my idols growing up. I sort of had three of them. I had Bobby Orr, John Ferguson, and Dick Butkus that played for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
I tried to be that type of a player. I thought, oh, okay, these are the three guys that I really like. Let me try and put a little bit of everything that they represent into my game. And if I think I could do that, then I would be a pretty well-rounded player.
Well,
So
I think it worked out for you, honestly. I mean, my memories of you, Barry, were that big guy with the perfect hair, right? And you didn't want to go down his side because you were gonna it was gonna hurt. And you played the game the right way. I remember it fondly as a kid growing up. And you were the ultimate defenseman, in my opinion. Big, strong, you'd contribute offensively. That was, and obviously if you think about what Dick Butkus did in football, it's what you said earlier about the angling, right? He was able to, play on the defensive side of the ball and just, not be beat, right? He'd run you over, and it wouldn't feel very good, right?
oh, he was a mean guy,
Yeah.
and he wasn't the fastest guy in the field, but from sideline to sideline, he was very fast.
Yeah.
But he tried to hurt people. I mean, he was just when you see these clips of,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love watching these old clips on YouTube and of players that played against. I mean, players on his own team were afraid of him because in some of these clips you see, if you got in his way when he went to hit people, and you were on the same team, you were going to get hurt too.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
when time to tackling, you made sure that you either were there before him quite a while or after him.
Yeah.
But after him, there was nothing to clean up anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So you end up, so you did you get traded to LA, or did you go there as a free agent? I know you played your last
No,
year.
I had so many shoulder problems with my 2 surgeries and 7 separations that I just needed some time off. So I took 3 years off, did a lot of rehab on my shoulder until I got better. And when I was in New York and I went through all those injuries, that was very hard for me because I was a strong guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, I was doing 460 on the bench.
Oh, wow.
And I never saw any steroids or anything at that point of my career. I mean, if I would have been doing steroids, I would have been doing 600 pounds on the bench. Probably would have been playing for the Giants, the New York Giants,
Exactly.
not the Rangers.
Yeah.
But so I felt invincible for a big portion of my career, until I got my first shoulder injury, and then it just never got better. So I took those 3 years off. I tried to get better. I worked with a physiotherapist in Vancouver by the name of Alex McKechnie. He did a lot of work for the LA, not only the Vancouver Canucks, but the LA Lakers with Kobe Bryant and Shaq. And he really helped me out. And so I felt a lot better. But those 3 years I took off, the game was changing. Most players were wearing helmets. I didn't really want to wear a helmet, but I did when I came back. And yeah, I was starting to feel better. Maybe halfway through the year, I was getting my timing back. And then they told me they were going to go with some young players down the stretch, and I probably wouldn't be playing that much. So I asked them to trade me before the trading deadline because I worked hard to try and come back.
Oh, yeah.
And they said they couldn't make a deal. And so I wasn't just going to sit around and collect money. So I retired again. And that was my last year, 1990.
Wow. So, and you got to play obviously with Gretzky there.
I did.
Yeah. How
Larry Robinson was there. John Tonelli was there. Marty McSorley. We had a really good veteran club. And, of course, Gretz. I mean, Gretz is a great guy. He does so much for the game. And, when we would go into different cities, most of us, we go on a road trip, you bring, maybe you bring six sticks with you.
Yeah.
Gretz would bring about 4 dozen because he had to give away most of his sticks. One time we were playing in Vancouver, my brother came into the dressing room and he asked Wayne to sign one of his hockey cards that he had. And Wayne said, "No, I can't do that for you, Murray. I'm sorry, but I do have something else for you." And he went in the back and he pulled out a hockey stick and he signed the blade, personalized the blade, signed the blade to him, to Murray. Best wishes, Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
So he was very, very accommodating, and yeah, he made the game better for everyone. It was just so exciting to play with him, even at that time being in LA, and what he did for the NHL in bringing it into different markets and opening up that California market. And nobody would have, I think, even 10 years ago, thought that Florida and Vegas would have been in the Stanley Cup Finals. That's how much the game has changed.
Well, they wouldn't have been if Gretzky didn't do what he did, right? If he doesn't go to LA, there's no Anaheim, I don't think. I mean, there might be by now, but they wouldn't be, the franchise that they are, right? There's been cups in Anaheim, LA, Tampa, Dallas, right? Some of these places where it's like, wow, you wouldn't have even thought there was going to be hockey back then. So yeah, that was cool. So we're gonna wrap up this segment here, and then I'm gonna open another link here to talk about post career. I think we got 5 minutes left on this link because we had to move over. So I'm gonna send you another link here in a minute. Take a break and maybe 5-10 minutes. We'll get back on and we'll talk about your post career and then wrap it up. But appreciate it, Barry. This is awesome. Brought to you by Don Cherry Sports Girls, folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send you a link here in a bit.
Okay.